We've seen video evidence of UFOs. We've heard stories from people who've had UFO experiences and with extraterrestrials. We have heard how people's consciousness can help them connect with their body, mind, and spirit. We've also touched on how governments from around the world seem to be holding something back from the public, and that is contact. But now we tie it all together. He's been called the father of exopolitics. He's worked for the United Nations and divisions of the U.S. government. He's an Ivy League graduate from Yale University. He's an author. And today he's one of the leaders and pioneers in protecting space by helping co-architect the Space Preservation Treaty and the Space Preservation Act. Over the last 30 years, he's become an icon in this field. Alfred Lambremont Webre describes exopolitics as the science of relations between or among intelligent civilizations in the multiverse. As a peace activist, Webre believes that all beings, even the ones that haven't been proven, should get along perfectly without war or corruption. Mr. Webre has worked in law from coast to coast, and I believe you're still a part of the bar in the District of Columbia, right? Which is, of course, Washington, D.C. He and his wife moved to Vancouver in 1998 after falling in love with the city during their honeymoon. Locally, Mr. Webre is a founding director of Canada's No Weapons in Space campaign, established in 2002. Year after year, this man's opinion is requested all over the world, from politicians and governments to special interest groups. In 2011, Mr. Webre noted that approximately 30 nations had already released their secret extraterrestrial and UFO files to the public. Mr. Webre has also publicly launched exouniversity.org, an educational site offering online classes for exosciences, sci-sciences, and exopolitics. Ladies and gentlemen, our keynote speaker for metaphysicalsource.com's Countdown to Contact, Mr. Alfred Lambremont Webre.
Well, thank you very much for staying at this late hour. We might be going to 11 p.m., so you might miss the late night news. I'm not sure if that's a concern. But I just heard that there were either three UFOs or three large orbs or a meteor that just flashed by, which is true. So we've had some activity out there while we were eating dinner or whatever. Our presentation tonight will be on the dimensional ecology of the Omniverse. And the Omniverse is really a new scientific term. That is one that we're positioning to move into and open the gates of the canon of science, which up to now only recognizes the multiverse, as we shall see. And if there's a subtitle to this, it's how source and souls in the spiritual dimensions create and inhabit the universes of the multiverse. Now, you might think that that's half a spiritual or religious sentence and half a scientific sentence, but it's entirely a scientific sentence. And that's a transformation as we enter the era when science and spirituality merge. So one of the inventions or discoveries that we've made, this book should really be called My Discoveries in Journeys Through the Omniverse. And it really is a map of the Omniverse. And these are equations that did not exist before this. And that's the front cover of the book. This is the Universe Books edition. And I'm happy to announce that a mainstream publisher, Inner Traditions Barron Company, has just picked it up, and they'll be bringing it out next year in 2015 in a second edition. So if you want a first edition, a collector's item that in many years from now will become extremely valuable, especially if I sign it. You can get it tonight. But the dimensional ecology equations are that the omniverse equals the multiverse plus the spiritual dimensions. Now, you might think that that's obvious, but it actually took a lot of work to get there. If you think about it, it took me 72 years of life to get there. It took this turn around the galaxy, 26,000 years to get there. It took whatever our collective incarnations are, however millions of years to get there. But that's the first time that equation has appeared on the planet. And so you're seeing it for the first time tonight, unless you've read the book. And what the multiverse is the multiverse is the totality of all the universes of time, space, energy, and matter. And we've also called them the exopolitical dimensions. Why? Because in the universes of the multiverse are populated by the intelligent civilizations that the intelligent civilizations of souls, spiritual beings, and source create. Yes, they actually create on a distributed basis all the extraterrestrials and different intelligent forms that exist in the multiplicity of universes. And we'll find out how many universes exist. And the final equation is that the spiritual dimensions equals the intelligent civilization of souls plus the spiritual beings plus source. Right now, the only one of those equations that you're permitted to teach and to learn by the canonical science, in other words, in all the primary schools, secondary schools, universities, graduate schools of the entire world, is the middle one, that the multiverse equals all the universes of space, time, energy, and matter. Because science only recognizes the universe and the multiverse. They do not recognize the afterlife or the interlife or the intelligent civilization of souls. They do not recognize the spiritual beings, and they do not recognize source or God. They're non-beings. And those are what are called matters of individual belief or culture. Well, this book places them using replicable scientific evidence plus the law of evidence, which myself, as a former law professor and judge, are thoroughly familiar with, that we've met the standards of official knowledge, which are uniform protocols and replicable results, and we've adhered to the law of evidence. Therefore, the walls of academia have now been deconstructed, and the omniverse has been let in. So that's the accomplishment of the ages, and you're now witnessing formally the integration of spirituality and science. So that's essentially what's occurring as we speak. Yet another discovery, which many of the speakers here have touched on. In fact, all of the speakers that I was here for touched on, the notable speakers that I was here for, is that if we proceed on the map of the Omniverse, two of the key technologies and abilities that we will find throughout the entire Omniverse are both telepathy, that is non-local mind-to-mind communication, and teleportation, which is displacement between points in a single dimension or along a single timeline, or when it's the form of time travel, it's displacement across a number of different timelines. And this pointed to the fundamental similarities between communication and transportation modalities among intelligent civilizations in the multiverse that we call extraterrestrials. Of course, to us, to other extraterrestrials on other planets, to inhabitants of other planets, we're extraterrestrials. So that's a relative term, you know. And we should call ourselves multiversians. We're all multiversians together. And the intelligent civilization of souls, in other words, all the inhabitants of the spiritual dimensions in the interlife or afterlife and in the rest of the spiritual dimensions, and all of the inhabitants of the multiverse in all of the universes, they all use teleportation and they all use telepathy. It's a common to all the entire dimensional ecology of the Omniverse. And that was a fundamental fact that I realized in my hotel room in Madrid, Spain, after Ima Sanchez, a reporter for the second largest newspaper in Spain that was in Barcelona, did a full-page interview for me on the back of, they called it La Contra, it's the back page of the front section in Barcelona. And she put down her pencil, she said, "Alfred, tell me how the universe functions. What's the relationship of reincarnation to extraterrestrials?" And it took me 5 years to answer her, and the result is that book. So always find a person who asks you the right questions. You'll succeed in finding your destiny or something like that. But for example, the process of incarnation, say in a usual birth, can be described in terms of teleportation, and that is a soul that's properly prepared at the time of incarnation will enter through the interdimensional portal between the afterlife dimension into our space-time hologram, say if it's incarnating here in the Earth dimension, and teleport to the time-space coordinates of the mother that it's incarnating in, right up to the her womb, right up to the fetus, typically about 3 months prior to birth, and then enmesh and embed himself or herself into the fetus. And so you can see how teleportation is pretty common. And of course, if you're involved in any contact experience or abduction experience, you know that you're teleported up to the ship, and it's all about telepathy after then. So it's all fairly simple. This stuff is really simple, and it's been shrouded in mystery and by religions, and by the extraterrestrials themselves, and by the powers that think they be. And so our job really as exopoliticians and as scholars and as seekers is to make it transparent. And it's really easy because we're on a positive timeline, and the time has come to reveal all the secrets. So it's like, hey, we won the prize. Peel the banana back or the onion or whatever. And so in terms of the photos, that's Professor J.B. Ryan, who founded the parapsychology lab at Duke, doing telepathy experiments. At the bottom, that's the aerial view of 999 North Sepulveda in Los Angeles. That is right next to LAX, and right under those structures there is an elevator that morphs into a teleportation room in which the CIA Mars Jump Room program which was gifted to the CIA by a species of gray extraterrestrials, would teleport all of the chrononauts and the VIP guests from LAX to the U.S. Secret facilities on Mars. So you'd get in the elevator, go to the top room, it would morph into a jump room in 15 minutes. You get out on the other end on Mars. We'll talk about that more in a second. So, finally, we're joining so the U.S. has had teleportation for about 40 years. We're now finally joining the entry-level technologies of entry-level intelligent species on the planet. This brings us to time travel, another discovery that we've made, and I would invite you to go to a paper that we published last week. You can go to our new website, positivefuture.info. And this paper was published on Scoop, New Zealand, and made world news last week. It was actually published on Google World News. And the paper is that we are actually scientifically now on a positive timeline in our Earth's time-space hologram. You know how this is, we're near the end of the world, ... Not. That is such a scam and such a lie. Because what happened is that essentially in 2011, 2012, depending on the model that you hold, either October 28, 2011 or December 21st, 2012, the entire space hologram that we're in shifted timelines to a positive timeline. And the portal, the interdimensional portal of our universe is now broadcasting full-time waves of unity consciousness. Unity consciousness is we are one. Duality consciousness, which is what our planet has been kind of ruled by, is I win, you lose. So the reason why we've had a planet of war, disease, crime, and poverty, those are the typical products of duality consciousness. I win, you lose. And now, as of December 21st, 2012, we have objectively shifted onto a positive timeline that is in a field, a broadcast field of unity consciousness, that is, of we are one. So the equation is positive future equals positive timeline plus unity consciousness. And what that means is that it's like the train has left the station, it is totally positive. So the more that they try to start World War III, the more they can't start World War III, and it's also up to humans to open their receptors and realize that they're in unity consciousness. So we're right at having a critical mass of humans acknowledging that they're in a field of unity consciousness. I had a meeting with a very interesting physician last week here in Vancouver, BC. He's a very prominent physician, teaches at UBC psychiatry. And he said, I teach my students that humans are hardwired for the negative like Velcro, but are hardwired for the positive like Teflon. Because it's so hard for us to keep a positive thought in our minds, but somebody says something negative and it sticks like Velcro. And he says that comes from so long that we've conditioned in the jungle that we hear the nearest tiger, is going to eat us. But actually what has been found is that the time-space hologram that we inhabit, we're in a time-space hologram now. We're in a virtual reality. This is a Carnival E-ride. How many people get that they're in a virtual reality that's actually a Carnival E-ride, that's an artificial construct created by a higher intelligence. How many people get that? That's a scientific reality now. It's like we're in a video game. Like my avatar is Alfred in this video game. And guess what? I've sampled this video game before, and I said, yeah, I want Alfred life. And you want your life. And you said, yeah, I want your life. That's a fact. We'll go through that. Now, what occurred is that on December 21st, 2012, we jumped into the positive timeline so that this global coastal events, which is where you have global tsunamis and destruction, I mean, mega destruction, like the entire population, that had been predicted by a 1971 DARPA chronovisor time travel probe of the year 2013, had found Washington, D.C. under 100 feet of brackish water, the U.S. Supreme Court building. A 2010 remote viewing probe of the largest number of military-trained remote viewers convened by the Farsight Institute, Dr. Courtney Brown, had found in June 2013 the U.S. Congress, which is right across the street from the U.S. Supreme Court, underwater, under 100 feet of water. Edgar Cayce, I wrote, my first book was The Age of Cataclysm, and we integrated earth sciences with the Edgar Cayce psychic predictions and some of the prophecies, and he said that there's going to be a global coastal event that he had psychically remote viewed, under which Japan goes under the ocean, and all the world cities are destroyed and the axis of the earth shifts. Guess what? June 2013 came around, 2013 came around. It didn't happen, but it occurred in an adjacent timeline, in another dimension, because we shifted onto another dimension. So all the Sturm und Drang of Nostradamus and World War III, that's from another dimension. But the Illuminati that have been using the biblical prophecies as their playbook and trying to recreate Nibiru with harp, so you have a Jesuit Pope get up and say today, oh, well, World War III is starting. Come on, guys. They're just beating themselves against a brick wall. It's science. It's not rocket science. It's time science. That's the new motto. Okay, so let's start to get an objective number of how many universes there are in the multiverse. First of all, it was a psychologist, William James, and novelist, 1842 to 1910, who created the term multiverse to mean the sum of all universes. And physicists Andrei Linde and Vitaly Vachurin of Stanford University have done a landmark scientific paper that came up with an estimate of the number of universes in our multiverse, and they use the word humongous. Why? Because it's a number that the human mind cannot comprehend. If you go to write out the number on a computer or on a typewriter in 12-point type, it would be 260 million miles long. That's the number of universes in the multiverse, and we are one of those universes. I love to contemplate that. I mean, it's just like if we think we're special, just contemplate that. And it's a wonderful number to contemplate. 260 million miles long is that number. There's no name for it other than humongous. Galaxies. One German supercomputer estimates that there are 500 billion galaxies in our universe alone. There are now 100 billion habitable Earth-like planets in our Milky Way galaxy and 50 sextillion Earth-like planets in our universe. There's a very conservative estimate of the number of intelligent civilizations in our universe, and this is based on the 1960 Drake equation, which assumes that there's only a dozen communicating intelligent civilizations in our galaxy, whereas let's look at the public opinion polls. In the USA, in one public opinion poll, which was a sample of 5,886, 37% affirmed a belief in the existence of extraterrestrial life, 21% denied it, and 42% responded, "I'm not sure." So over 60% of the US population said, "I'm not sure." And that's the US population, which is an affluent, educated population. And look at the statistics. World opinion. A 2010 poll by the French marketing research company Ipsos, a world public opinion on extraterrestrials, found that 1 in 5, 20%, of human adults surveyed in 22 countries that represent 75% of world GDP. So that's probably the top 22 countries. Say only 20% believe that alien beings have come down to Earth and walk among us. So that means that 80% either don't believe it or have no opinion. And here they are living in a planet in a highly populated and highly organized universe and multiverse. Doesn't that say something about how isolated and ignorant our Earth population is about its true situation in reality? And that's among the educated countries, i.e., those are the 22 countries with the highest GDP. Why? Because that's what modern education has done. Modern brainwashing. That's modern scientific canon, which has been designed to cut us off from any semblance of reality and make us automatons, the transhumanist agenda that wants to make us into robots and cut us off from any reality, including the reality of our soul existence. If we go to the latest and look inside the polls, India and China, which are members of the BRICS, people in India, 45%, and in China, 42%, are most likely to believe that extraterrestrials are visiting Earth. Isn't that interesting? And the BRICS countries, there was a recent Ipsos poll in 2014 that showed that the Ipsos countries and Turkey were the only countries on Earth in which the population believed that their children would have a better life than they had. All of the other countries, including Canada, the United States, Western Europe, believed that their children would be worse off and were pessimistic about the future. And only the BRICS countries, and here China and India, have the highest belief in extraterrestrials walking among us. Is there a correlation there? I submit that there is, because they understand that extraterrestrials have a positive role. Most probably, they can have a negative, but now most probably have a positive role among us. But these statistics, if you examine them closely, give us food for thought. Now, let's get more deeply into the map of the Omniverse. And a typology that came up as a result of a request that I had from Oxford University Press, which is a division of Oxford University in England. And they asked me if I would write a book on extraterrestrials and the law. And when I went to do that, I discovered that in my judgment, there was not a typology, with all due respects to Dr. Kardashev and to Dr. Michio Kaku, that I felt could be universally applied. And so I went forward and began to poll the extraterrestrials themselves. And I said, well, how do extraterrestrials themselves type themselves, or how do they think about themselves? And I discovered that the way that the most fundamental way that the extraterrestrials think about themselves is by the dimension of consciousness, or the density of consciousness in which they are based. In other words, I'm an Arcturian from the sixth dimension, or the sixth density. I'm a Pleiadian from the fifth dimension, or the fifth density. That's the most fundamental criterion by which they type themselves. And so, for the purposes of an extraterrestrial typology, we are of the third density, extraterrestrial civilization of the third, an intelligent civilization of the third density. I developed the dimension-based typology of intelligent civilizations. And so this distinguishes between intelligent civilizations in the time-space dimension, hyperdimensional civilizations, and intelligent civilizations governance authorities. We've all heard of the galactic federations. Well, they exist, in fact. And the universe, the multiverse, is highly populated and highly governed. You can't put up a building here on Earth without getting a building permit. Outer space is not willy-nilly. You've got to follow the rules. There's also exophenotypology. In other words, the typology that is based on a classification of extraterrestrials based on the observable characteristics of their physical appearance. That's an actual photograph of a gray extraterrestrial given to Robert Dean, who's a great colleague of mine, in 1994 by a Mexican policeman. And, you've got many different exophenotypologies ranging from humanoid to gray. There are over 150 species of gray that we know. Gray, human is like the primate, the intelligent primate. Reptilians are like the intelligent dinosaur. Insectoids are like the intelligent grasshopper. Grays are like the intelligent plant. They live on chlorophyll, and they have a copper-based circulation system. That's kind of a rough analogy. Oh, and also, yes, we live in a universe which is primarily a human universe. And there's a lot of turf battles between the reptilian intelligence and the human intelligence. And it goes back and forth. That's what Star Wars is all about. Okay, so we'll be doing a case study of a time-space solar system civilization, just so you can get a flavor for another space-time third-density civilization that exists in our own solar system. The exophenotypology of Martian humanoids that we know of is based on eyewitnesses, that is, people who've actually interacted with Martian humans, either here on Earth, because Martian humans visit Earth and there are Martian colonies of Martian humans here on Earth, and or who have visited and met with humans on Mars. There are U.S. secret bases on Mars, and there are multi-extraterrestrial projects that are going on Mars. All of this is kept from the Earthian population, which we object to. When I say we, we're the Mars Anomaly Research Society. And you can visit us on Facebook, or you can visit us at projectmars.net. And we're in the process of drafting a Mars protection treaty, whereby it would be between Earth and Mars to affirm Martian sovereignty and for a lot of mutual benefit. Mars has 3 distinct exophenotypes. These are Martian humans. There are actually 5 Martian human exophenotypes. There's the Homo Martis terris. There are genetic cousins. They kind of look like humans. They were, prior to the 9500 BC solar system catastrophe, in which a fragment of the Vela supernova came into the solar system, collided with Mars, also collided a bit with Earth, destroyed our great maritime civilization known as Atlantis, made Mars into a obloid planet. It looks a bit like a pumpkin. Mars and Earth were an interplanetary society. That's why we're both pyramidal societies. Lots of pyramids on Earth, lots of pyramids on Mars, under the rulership of the predecessors to the Egyptian pharaohs. That's why if you go on Mars, there are lots of pharaoh-like objects there, lots of Egyptian objects. You'll see Egyptian pharaoh, sarcophagi. You'll see frescoes of Egyptian pharaohs. It's because it was Earth and Mars were both under the pharaohs. And finally, we like to say that there is no scientific, legal, or ethical requirement that a decision about intelligent life exists on Mars must satisfy the whimsical criterion proposed by Carl Sagan that, quote, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. No, all you need is scientific evidence, and evidence that would satisfy a courtroom jury. That's all you need, is standard protocol, replicable results, and the standard of evidence is more probably than not. There's nothing extraordinary about that. These are some of the Mars eyewitnesses or experiencers, people who've been on Mars. A close colleague of mine who met Martian astronauts for the first time in 1971 at a military base in New Jersey. 3 Martian astronauts were visiting the U.S. on a defense technical liaison visit. That's U.S. chrononaut Lieutenant Commander Andrew D. Bashago who has also visited Mars numerous times, in the 1980s in the company of his roommate, one Barry Soetoro, who now, rumor has it, resides at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue under the assumed name of Barack Obama, who in October 1982, we have the raised seal document, changed his name from Barry Soetoro to Barack Obama II at a Canadian courthouse in Skookumchuck, BC. So the CIA does horrible things with its operatives like Barry Soetoro. U.S. Marine Corps Captain Randy Kramer, he spent 17 years on Mars as part of the Mars Defense Force, deployed mainly in the polar regions. The equatorial regions of Mars are under the control of the Martian humanoid that live underground. The Martian polar regions are under the control of the Martian intelligent reptilian and insectoid species. They are inimical to humans. The reptoid species are often 8 feet tall, have 2 hearts, and are very fierce, and as are the insectoids. And so that he is alive is a miracle. You can go on to exopolitics.org and listen to a lot of his interviews. One time they were ordered to go into an insectoid area to retrieve an artifact. They went in with 1,000 Marines, U.S. Marines, and only 100 Marines survived. So it's pretty fierce. So Mars is very hostile. There's no vegetation. At the polar regions is dominated by hostile insectoids and reptilians. At the equatorial regions, the surface area is dominated by hostile dinosaurs. They're small-scale dinosaurs, maybe about 6 foot high, but that'll still eat you. And so it's only safe to be underground. So that's about that. And there's been an ongoing attempted invasion by the hyperdimensional Orion Greys and Draco reptilians, who timelined the occupation of Earth for sometime between 2030 and 2050. And that's why Andrew Basiago met the Martian astronauts in 1970, because it was following the 1952 overflight of the U.S. Capitol by the Orion Greys that the Martians and the humans, in terms of the CIA, agreed to a common defense perimeter to defend against this hyperdimensional incursion by the Orion Greys and Draco reptilians, who had timelined the occupation of both Earth and Mars. So Star Wars is a reality, and they've been keeping the human population here in the dark because they want to infantilize it. They think that the human population can't take it. I disagree with that assessment, but everybody has their own assessment. These are 2 more of the chrononauts who've been on Mars. Lieutenant William B. Stillings, U.S. Presidential Advisor Bernard Mendez. He's spoken here at one of our Exo University events that we've held here at the Roundhouse. We'll be holding another Exo University event at the Roundhouse next spring, which I would encourage you to. Bernard Mendez, believe it or not, was a presidential advisor to Richard M. Nixon, who's been greatly maligned, and yet Richard M. Nixon was a consultant to the U.S. government on the Greys even after he had resigned in disgrace. And he was sort of set up during the Watergate era by negative elements in the CIA, because he was trying to shut down rogue elements in the CIA who were using the time travel machines for the laundering of great sums of money illegally on the planet. He was kind of a straight guy, actually. It's weird. I mean, the whole thing is really weird. These are two more. Lawrence Livermore Labs physicist, Arthur Neumann. I spoke to him via Skype. He's living in England at an undisclosed location. His health is been hurt a great deal because by this teleportation travel to Mars, he was invited to and went on a visit to Mars for a project meeting with extraterrestrials from all over the solar system and beyond. And when he got back to Earth, his system had been greatly affected negatively. He came out under the name Henry Deacon, but his real name's actually Arthur Neumann. And he now lives in England in seclusion, and he's only alive because he's taking this medicine every day. And this is U.S. Serviceman Michael Relf and his wife Stephanie, who wrote the 2 volumes of his book, The Mars Records, where it details his 20 years on Mars as a member of the security staff at the U.S. colony on Mars. This is a photograph of the 3rd exophenotype on Mars, and that's Martis terris extraterrestrialis, the Martian gray sort of. And this is taken from a photograph taken, PIA 10214, taken by the Mars rover. Sort of, if you see here, that's sort of a rocks. Do you see kind of rocks like that? Do you see these sort of gray rocks, gray-blue rocks? Can people see that? Yes? Okay. Now, the Martian humanoid is sort of leaning on the rocks and looking away from the camera. That's his head. That's his torso. His arms and his elbows are on the rocks. And his torso comes down, and his 2 legs are right here. They're sort of in a blue kind of leggings, and his legs come out here. So he's leaning on here and looking out that where he's very thin. He's like a little gray. Can people make that out? Yeah. So that was the first publicly available photograph in history of a Martian on Earth, and the first time since 9500 BC that the photograph of a Martian has been seen publicly on Earth, and you're seeing it now. And that was made available by our nonprofit, the Mars Anomaly Research Society. Thank you very much. And we have researchers, all of this is done on a voluntary basis, who go into the Mars rover photographs, and they search and they enlarge them and they find them in there because NASA hides them. They have 7 techniques to hide them, and our guys discover them. So this is extraterrestrial disclosure par excellence. Now, these are a little harder to see, but this is Homo Martis terris that were discovered in PIA 10214. They typically are bald. They wear black or blue kafkans or gray jackets, and they resemble bald men on Earth. Here, sorry, what did I do? Oh, I did the wrong thing, sorry. Make sure I get the right. Okay, here, you have to use your imagination. This guy has his back to the camera. He's just seen the camera, and he's trying to run away from the camera. This is his left arm as he's running away. He's wearing like this kaftan or robe. His right leg is running away. This is his right or left leg behind him. The robe is running away. This is his right arm. And he's like this. He's trying to run for cover away from the camera. Can people see that? That's his head, the outline of his body. that's a bald Martian humanoid in a robe that's running away from the camera. That's one of our genetic cousins. So hopefully Martians and Earthens will be reunited on the surface. Now, the CIA and DARPA are bringing Martians back in the teleportation device. And
I'm certain, does Mars have a breathable atmosphere?
yeah,
It does, okay.
of course. It's like being in Denver, Colorado. Kind of you're at about 3,000 feet up. And the skies are blue. All you're being fed is disinformation. So that you won't realize that the U.S. is trying to absorb Mars at the 51st state. See, because it has lots of minerals, and that's the way USA absorbed Puerto Rico and the Philippines once, and they tried to do it to Cuba, and now they're trying to do it to Mars. That's the game that's going on. It's called colonization. There's a lot of sleight of hand going on. And that's why Barack Obama was on Mars, but that's why he denied it. And when I broke the story, Examiner, I've got a fellow journalist here, he can testify to it, illegally broke my contract because I broke that story, and the public relations director of the U.S. National Security Council, that includes the president, the vice president, secretary of defense, secretary of state, came out and spiked my story, denied it officially to Wired magazine that was carried by Fox News and everybody. As von Bismarck said, who was the master of international politics, he said, once you get an official denial, you know it's true. So that's exopolitics. So that's basically what's going on, is that the U.S. is attempting to put colonies on Mars and claim Mars as a territory so it will own the mineral rights of Mars. That's in contravention of the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, in which no nation can claim a celestial body. And it's against the Moon Treaty. That's why the United States hasn't signed the Moon Treaty.
I gotta ask, what kind of minerals do you wear up? Could be gold, silver, uranium, copper,
It's a planet.
got everything you figure?
It's a planet.
No.
I mean, Mars was an Earth-like planet prior to 9500 BC. It was just like us.
Intriguing.
So, this is a homomorphous terrace from behind. You know, you can see his butt there. He's trying to go like this into a hole, into a hatch. And this is a rock here, and the homomorphous terrace is peering around the rock. You can see his head here and his shoulders here, and he's peering around the rock at the camera. So, you know, all of this they're keeping secret. It's totally secret. It's totally mercenary. It's the 19th century colonialism in the 20th century. And humanity's being taken for a ride.
Who took those pictures?
That's the rover, the Mars rovers, and then our technicians find these photos. They find the photos inside.
Are they afraid of being seen?
What?
Are they afraid of being seen? Is that why they're dashing off and trying to?
They are shy. There's a lot of shy, because all of a sudden you have this invading force. And there have been Martians that have been killed. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's going on that is basically illegal, but it's like realpolitik at the solar system level.
The insectoids that are living there, are they like native to Mars, or are they from somewhere else? And what kind of insectoids are
That's a good question. As to whether they're native or not, I know that in the polar region, some of there's some Dracos there from the Draco system. As to whether the reptilians and the insectoids are native, I'm going to, I don't want to answer yes or no because I don't know the answer to that. I was on a program, on a panel with Randy Kramer, who spent 17 years on there, and we didn't get to that question.
So do you know what kind of insectoids?
I think that they're of the praying mantis variety, but I'm not sure.
Have you ever heard of like bees?
Bees?
Yeah. Large.
Yeah, they're at the equatorial region. We have an outdoor sculpture garden, and one of the outdoor sculpture gardens is a giant bee. So, may have. I kind of want to go quickly because otherwise we won't make it. Okay, so this is some more of this answers some of your questions. This is an insect-human hybrid. Oh, it's a little more. The scorpion man. And if you see here, you can see their bodies. You see the bodies? These kind of blue scorpion-like bodies, and their heads here are human-like heads. Can people see that? So that there's a lot of animal forms here. Now, we don't know yet, how did these result? Like, why are these insectoid human hybrids appearing? Like, these are all unknown questions. If you go to exopolitics.com or projectmars.net, you can download the discovery of life on Mars that has a treasure trove of these and a lot of the questions. We've sent it initially to National Geographic, where you're supposed to register the discovery of new species, and we've gotten resounding silence from them. So, and we got the U.S. National Security Council to deny, So how this surfaces in the culture is going to be really interesting. This is another category of things. This looks like an octopus. Oh, darn, I'm sorry, my apologies, I just haven't mastered this. This looks like an octopus, but it's a land creature and it sort of has the head of a dog, kind of. So there are all these kind of strange hybrid-like. This is our Mars Anomaly Research Society logo. And that's a Martian plesiosaur. And these are the dinosaurs that are very common in the equatorial region. You can see its body there. You can see its long neck. It's looking away from the camera. Is that fairly clear to people? And that's supposed to be like Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster, or here, Oki, the Okanagan Monster, or whatever. Anyway, and our website is projectmars.net.
They're not friendly,
No, they're carnivores and they'll eat you.
but they're not very smart either, so they can escape it from them. Is that what happened? See them coming, they won't? Is that why those small guys will run?
Yeah, but you better have a hidey hole nearby.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we'll switch. So that was a case study of time, space, third dimension civilization in our solar system. So what we're doing is showing scientific evidence of each category of the dimension-based typology of intelligent civilizations, so that it's a model that holds up. We aren't making it up of whole cloth. You know, this could be a zoology class, correct? Exozoology. So hyperdimensional civilizations are intelligent civilizations based in dimensions in our universe parallel to our own time-space dimensions, or in universes parallel to our universe. And they may use technologically advanced interdimensional transport when teleporting into our physical universe or into our dimension, i.e., they can create their own wormholes to teleport, say, from fourth dimension or wherever they come from into ours. And this is a photograph taken by a colleague of mine, Wilbur Allen, on July 16, 2002, of hyperdimensional ETs who are generating a wormhole to enter the protected airspace over the U.S. Capitol, and they're landing there on a U.S. Senate building, which they do to kind of show, hey guys, we're here. They even buzz the White House, which I kind of like. Well, we're just visiting from 5D. How are you? And they telepathically communicate with Will Allen, who's head of UFO DC. If you'd like to see a lot of his stuff, go to either ufodc.com or go to exopolitics.com. We have a lot of things with him there. And they telepathically communicate to Will Allen. They say, go here to the White House, or go to the Senate office building, go to the Capitol. And he goes, and they'll be there. And that's how these photographs get made. This is, speaking of the Iseti Ranch at Mount Adams, this is a photograph of a 10-foot tall feline extraterrestrial. You know, you've heard of humanoid extraterrestrials, you've heard of reptilian extraterrestrials. Well, this is a feline. These are big cats. Can people make that out? Intelligence can take on any form. Why not a cat? This is a picture of an archon, which are interdimensional beings. They're like an intelligent virus, which promote negativity and separation. And from a certain point of view, you can say that some people theorize that they were present at the design of this universe and that there was a flaw in the design of the universe. That's one theory. Another theory is that some voyagers from this universe used the portal that wasn't supposed to be used, and the archons entered in through that portal. Some people say, well, you can characterize Earth in its present era as having an archon infestation. In other words, our world of war, disease, crime, and poverty and negativity is really the result of an infestation of archons in humanity's minds, these negative things.
Could you tell me what you mean by inorganic? What are they made of?
I don't want to guess and give you misinformation. I have the most specific that I've come about is inorganic. But John Lash has written a lot about them, and you can go to Robert Stanley's work and also Laura Eisenhower.
Do they live in the human mind?
Sorry?
Do they live in the human mind?
They can infect your expanded being, yes.
They're swarming around.
Yeah, for example, one of the cases that I saw was that you'll have an Archon queen that runs a lot of drug addicts. And they really feed off of drug addicts. And there was this one worker who got this one person off of drugs, and apparently the Archon queen was really pissed off at that person. You know, i.e., it's not just drug addicts that are there, and it's not just the heroin trade that's doing it. It's interdimensional. In other words, there's a whole interdimensional structure that's behind the international drug trade, because then those minds are in these really dark places and they feed off of that. And that's a reality. So most of all the phenomenon, it's like the iceberg. Like what we experience in our waking reality is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a model called, which you can look up, it's in the journals of the American Psychical Research Society journal. It's called the Psi-Mediated Instrumental Response Model. And what that model says is that all human thought and action is mediated by subconsciously derived psychic information. What that means is that, quote, the accidental meeting that you have with a friend at a street corner in which valuable information is exchanged is actually set up by this elaborate network of psychic information where people are exchanging it all the time, and then you're drawn to that street corner, and then at the carbon unit level you go, oh, well, Billy has a room available in his apartment, you know. And that's how the world works. So we are like little tips of the iceberg walking around. And it's not only by psychic information that we're connected. We are connected by the dimensional ecology of the Omniverse. And that dimensional ecology has all kinds of multidimensional influences in it. It can be both negative and positive. On the positive side, we have the intelligent civilization of souls that is on us all the time. They're on us in our dream state. We have a soul assigned to us for our entire lifetime. That's an advanced soul, that's a trained soul, that's known as a guide. That will have planned this life with you, and that's there to pick you up when you stumble. And every night, souls come to you in your dreams. I mean, souls are omnipresent. Then there's extraterrestrials all over, interdimensionals, spiritual beings. The dimensional ecology is huge. It's like it takes a village to raise a child. It takes an army of the dimensional ecology for every single human being to make it through life. That's a scientific fact. We are just, through the artificial loss of memory and through this artificial separation program that we have, we come in here and we feel like we're not, but we're actually surrounded by this huge dimensional ecology. And it can be negative. Like we can come under the control of a whole nest of archons that we're feeding because we become drug addicts, or we become crime addicts, or we become power addicts, or satanic entities if we get into ritual killing. I mean, look at the Catholic Church, look at the governments, look at the kings and queens. They're out there, they have to sacrifice babies just to stay in power. because they're driven that way by the reptilians, by the archons that are forcing them to do this. This is a really dense planet. This is a satanic planet. Jesus, when he landed here, you know, he had to confront Lucifer, a high angel, face to face. Lucifer said, "I'll give you anything you want." He says, "My kingdom is not of this earth." He was like the initial parachuter. We are like the after troops, you know, on D-Day. Our job's easy. We're just mopping up. So, intelligent civilization governance authorities. There are at least two prima facie exopolitical evidence for legally constituted intelligent civilization governance authorities. One is replicable scientific remote viewing. That's from the Farsight Institute, Dr. Courtney Brown. People have mentioned a number of his books. And you can read the transcripts there of his interactive communication with galactic governance authorities. And also, again, of eyewitnesses and documentary evidence of contactees and telepathic interaction with representatives and intermediaries of intelligent civilizations, governance authorities. And we have a number of them on exopolitics.com. One, a Canadian colleague of mine who was a lifelong NORAD officer who passed away in 2010. And I got one of the last interviews with him while he was alive. And he was the one who, in his book, he predicted in his book, as they had told him, that there would be an overflight of the regional governance council of this sector of the galaxy on October 13, 2010, over New York. And sure enough, they overflew. And if we look at the evidence for the creation of humanity appears to have been created by a consortium of upper dimensional ethical extraterrestrial civilizations as a third dimension light being, 12-strand DNA light being in the third dimension. And all of the other incursions, there have been incursions violating the rule of non-interference by the Anunnaki in various time frames. I've actually been through the favor of, thanks to Michael Tellinger, who took a group of us to Adam's calendar, where the Anunnaki landed about 280,000 years ago. And through sound technology, we're able to take our DNA down. And so, in some way, nothing has changed for 280,000 years. I call it the Anunnaki Illuminati exploitative hierarchy. If you look at the popes and the cardinals and the queens and the kings, they're all trying to look like Anunnaki, and they're all stealing our gold and suppressing our DNA, and nothing has changed. Except things are changing now because we're on the positive timeline and we're taking back our DNA. We're taking back our sovereignty. And that's through the operation of the universe itself. Now, in terms of the evidence of the afterlife, from a scientific perspective, there are various ways to look at the reality of the continuation of consciousness after bodily death. There's verifiable apparitions, communications with consciousness after death through mediums, through technology, computer, video, and cell phones. studies of reincarnated consciousness, near-death experience, and hypnotic regression into memories of the interlife or afterlife. One of my favorites is ITC, Instrumental Transcommunication, where you interact with a person in the interlife through a computer. Like, for example, can you see in this image, do you see a face? Okay, that's an image from a streaming video on the internet, and that's interacting with a person in the afterlife through streaming video. It's like talking with them on Skype. And I've spoken to persons who've spoken to persons in the afterlife on a cell phone. And that's because we're just in discrete bands of consciousness energy. And, Skype and streaming video deals with energy bands, and cell phones deal with energy bands. And that's all it is. See, all this stuff is becoming transparent, and all the mumbo jumbo is being thrown out. So you don't have to say bum ba bum ba bum ba bum ba. You just have to dial it up. That's what people are doing. Like, get real, man. Just dial it up. This is a photograph by Russian scientist Konstantin Korotkov that he photographed a person at the moment of his death with a bioelectrographic camera, and the soul is in blue. So you can see that the soul is distributed. It's kind of like, the meta body, and then it goes off. And by the soul, we mean the individuated, non-local, conscious, intelligent entity that is based in the interlife dimensions and that is a holographic fragment of the original source or creator of the spiritual dimensions. Now, the principle of a hologram is that the whole is contained in each part of the hologram, so that the whole of God is contained in each part of the hologram in our soul. So the whole of God is contained in each of us. So when we say namaste, I salute the God within you, that's literal. So, hey, treat yourself and your body with reverence, because we are God. And are you ready to accept that as a literal fact? I mean, that's kind of mind-blowing, isn't it? And collectively, God, the entity that creates all of the universes, all of the planets, galaxies, intelligent civilizations, develops all these intelligent civilizations in every universe of the multiverse, all the humongous number of universes. That collective that is known as God is actually the sum of the spiritual dimensions, which is God plus the spiritual beings plus the entire civilization of souls, which means that we act as God collectively. And we spend most of our time in the interlife, out in the universes, creating them and tweaking time in this universe and going to the next universe to help out a solar system. We don't spend all of our time incarnating. We spend most of our time on universe missions. So we're God. You get it? And the empirical evidence for this, for example, is derived, for the existence of the intelligent civilization of souls, is derived from a replicable database of more than 7,000 cases of hypnotic regression of soul memories of the interlife, developed according to a standard protocol. And that's the work of Dr. Michael Newton. This is a representation of the interdimensional portal between, say, our time-space dimension and the interlife, or the afterlife. And, for example, some of the findings that we know now is that in a typical life, when you cross over, there are various techniques when you're received. In the development technique, your soul, as it departs, when it departs the body, is enveloped by a large circular mass of energy. That's to kind of ease its transition. Or there's also a focus effect, which is like an acupuncture effect. And there's also emergency treatment. That is, a soul who has had an accidental death, violent death in a war or something. There's an emergency death. And there's a whole series of soul groups that we go into and are assigned to. The learning curves among souls vary greatly. When we're created, the process that we're created by advanced souls that are assigned to this task, and they dip into what's like a great pool of light, which is God, like a sea of light, and we come out as eggs of light from that sea of light. So literally, we're holographic fragments of God. And there's a whole science to soul creation, and each one is individual. But it's a manufacturing process. There's the whole process in the interlife to prepare for incarnations is highly technologized. You'll have a lot of life review after lives. You'll have life preparation before lives with regards that they have whole sets of videos where you can sample different lives. Say, oh, do I want this one? Do I want that one? And there's a lot of discussion. This is like a big carnival e-ride we're on. This is not real, folks, and this is real. This is a virtual reality trip we're on. This is advanced technology. Now, here are some findings that are quite instructive as to some of the both opportunities and difficulties we find, say, here on Earth. You'll find that the distribution is about 42% beginner souls, 57% intermediate souls, and 1% advanced souls. And the findings are that that's one of the main bottlenecks to Earth's moving to a more progressive and advanced planet. It's because of the large number of beginner souls that we have in our population. And that's why it's so difficult to raise Earth's vibration up, why it's so easy to get them to move toward war, why they move and are captured by religions that teach them dogmas that are scientifically totally false, and that have them captured for thousands of years in these dogmas that are totally false. Because as a mind, you've got that 42% that are beginner souls. So we have as awakening souls, we have to devise strategies for reaching those people. We incarnate as a variety of beings in a variety of worlds. And we can incarnate in more than one life at once. We can be leading 2 or 3 lives at once. And our soul is anchored in the interlife, and we can be a bird in an avian planet, and an insect in an insectoid planet, and a human in a human planet. It appears that hyperdimensional grays have a role in soul incarnation on this planet. It's the case of Suzanne Hansen, and she supplied all of the drawings here, which are done by her husband, that she described, but very briefly. Suzanne was taken aboard a ship when she was a young girl and introduced to the soul of her future son that was aboard the gray craft. Fast forward to when she was married and pregnant. And at that point, she's depicted there on a gurney, and there's a specialized gray that has his hand over her eyes, and the soul is brought in, and the gray enmeshes the soul of her son into the fetus in the womb. And before that, they had told her that her son had an important role. Her son's now a lawyer in New Zealand. She's the head of UFO New Zealand. And he's been told about this role, but he still can't remember his life on the craft, although she remembers it. You can go to exopolitics.com and look up a lot of the research on this. Here's some facts on world public opinion and the spiritual dimensions about divine entities, according to 2011 Ipsos poll and taken 23 nations. Again, these are the most prosperous nations that make about 75% of world GDP. The quote, the most educated, right? These are the literate nations. 1/2 of global citizens definitely believe in a divine entity, compared to 18% who don't and 17% who aren't sure. Now, review the scientific evidence that you just read for the existence of a divine entity versus in the most intelligent and educated realms of this planet. Only half of the planet believe that there's a divine entity. I think that that's a fairly large percentage of ignorance. And that's primarily due, I think, to the fact that teaching about the Omniverse, about the existence of teaching the scientific facts about the afterlife, about God, about spiritual beings, about the Omniverse is prohibited by the scientific canon. Literally prohibited. And I mean prohibited because I've met with universities here in BC. I've given them the curriculum. I've met with the chairman of the department and high officers, and they say, Alfred, you're 10 years ahead of your time. You can't do this. And I was just looking at their fears. I wasn't looking at anything real. So that's why we founded Exo University. The afterlife. The poll also found 51% believe in some kind of afterlife, while the remaining half either believe that they will cease to exist, 23%, or 26% don't know. This is in the most educated nations on the planet. More than half the people don't believe in an afterlife. And look at the scientific facts for it. Oh, it's cruel. It's so chic to believe. Like Jean-Paul Sartre. Être le nez. Reincarnation. Reincarnation is a scientific regularity of a human being. That's how the universe was designed. 7% of humans believe in reincarnation. What a friggin' ignorant planet. What an underinformed planet. I'm sorry. What other words? I mean, just looking at it objectively. Suppose that you're a team of off-planet missionaries that you've been come here to look, you've got to inform them about these facts. These guys just run around and they think that, nothing's going to happen after death, and they think they don't come back. And I'm here to prepare you for this terrain, and only 7% of them believe in reincarnation. Man, they're ignorant. Isn't that, or brainwashed? Am I being too harsh? Yeah.
I just have to say that I think there's a difference between people who have come from other places here to help and people who have been here lifetime after lifetime after lifetime and are very shut off. So I think the enlightened ones of us come from a different place.
Oh, I know.
So obvious to us.
Oh, yeah.
There are so many people who are very shut down.
No, I understand. So I'm taking the stance tonight of briefing you on the statistics so you know what's real. So you know what you're up against. It's a hard sell. So it's mixed results, right? Oh, and I thought I was going to save the planet with my little dimensional ecology book. Okay, so what are the purposes of the dimensional ecology of the Omniverse? A core mission of the dimensional ecology appears to be the creation and development of souls and spiritual beings in the spiritual dimensions, right? That's what the Creator set out to do. The collection and collective creation. So it turns out that the intelligent civilization of souls and spiritual beings, along with Source, collectively create and maintain the totality of the universes of time, space, matter, and energy in the exopolitical dimensions. The irony is that we have met the enemy and we are them. If you understand my meaning. Because everybody in the multiverse is a soul. Just about. But they're inside these avatars. So it's a game. How can we reach them? And soul development. The purposes of the dimensional ecology include the facilitation of multidimensional development and moral growth of souls in all dimensions of the omniverse through a variety of activities. So, what are the top 10 conclusions of research? What can we conclude from all of this? Number one, that a dimensional ecology exists, that we've shown prima facie evidence that it supports this dimensional ecology, and that we earthlings live in a dimensional ecology that encompasses intelligent civilizations based in parallel dimensions and universe in the multiverse, as well as soul, spiritual beings, and source in the spiritual dimensions. Secondly, that exopolitics, the science of relations among intelligent civilizations, and parapsychology, the science of psi-consciousness, telepathy, reincarnation, the soul, the interlife, and source, God, are the proper scientific disciplines for exploring and mapping the dimensional ecology of the omniverse. 3, dimensionality. Dimensionality, the ability of intelligence to organize itself via dimensions, discrete bands of conscious energy, appears to be a key criterion by which the omniverse is designed. 4th, developmental level of beginner souls. The consciousness and developmental level of souls incarnating on Earth and our collective ability to comprehend the dimensional ecology of the multiverse constitute both a bottleneck and a key to future evolution of earthling humans. Namely, the large number, 42% of beginner souls on Earth, is like a challenge. It's like 42% are in kindergarten. 5, soul power. The long-term positive transformation of power, economic, and social structures on Earth may depend on soul power. That is, significant soul development during an incarnation can occur in breakthroughs in how science-based knowledge and information about the dimensional ecology is consciously internalized and openly acknowledged in human society. Once human society acknowledges that, hey, guess what? We're all incarnated souls. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And we're going to organize human society such that the soul prospers and is developed. No more self-centeredness, no more service to self. It's all about helping each other soul about. Because they're, we're all going to see each other in the afterlife, in the before life, whatever. Accelerate comprehension of populated universe and ET UFO. The dimensional ecology, the Omniverse hypothesis, all of this information and models will accelerate our comprehension that we live in a populated universe and accelerate our comprehension of extraterrestrial civilization, UFOs, because now we understand how it all works. It's all in the principle of souls. I mean, an extraterrestrial at the other end of the multiverse is a soul that's incarnated that way. Accelerate comprehension of basic reality concepts. There are basic reality concepts such as soul, interlife, source, reincarnation that the planet is in denial of now because major forces like the Catholic Church in 325 denied its existence for political reasons because he wanted to keep adherents. Souls are central. The science-based study of the dimensional ecology reveals the centrality of the intelligent civilization of souls in the creation, maintenance, design, and ultimate incarnation into the universes of the exopolitical dimensions and in the design of the Omniverse itself. 9, humanity has been misinformed by religion and science. That's something that really has come through for me in these 5 years of research. And that is that most of what the world's, quote, great religions teach is based on texts that are outdated and wrong and beliefs held in the heads of people that are totally scientifically wrong. And they're just perpetuating ignorance. And they're considered as sacred, and it's like, oh, let me consider this sacred falsehood even more sacred, even more. And guess what? Because you're considering another falsehood sacred, I'm going to kill you. And finally, science and spirituality integrated. That yes, finally we're seeing here science and spirituality integrated, which is what's prophesied for this time. And I hope that you've had an experience of that tonight. And thank you for patiently listening tonight, even at this late hour. Thank you very much.